And I'm glad to be here today on the kind invitation of my friend Glenn Beck, because he believes, as I do, that America is at a crossroads. We are in the midst of a very real test of the character of our nation. In the wake of incredibly damning video evidence exposing the nation's largest abortion chain, Planned Parenthood, people around the country are being forced to face an inconvenient truth. Being pro-choice isn't about empowerment, it's about dismemberment. Babies literally torn apart limb by limb and sold piecemeal, the rest discarded with the daily trash. Meanwhile, our government is so morally bankrupt that there has to even be a debate to decide if this is wrong and whether or not they will stand with our weakest and most vulnerable, America's preborn children, or if they will stand with the abortion lobby that lines campaign coffers of powerful politicians. In the last few months, we've witnessed Planned Parenthood's horrific practice of selling the hearts, the lungs, the livers of innocent children, all exposed by undercover video from the Center for Medical Progress. These videos reveal callous lunchtime conversations in which abortionists eat salad, drink wine, and discuss how best to dismember a preborn child in order to harvest his or her parts for sale. Other footage took us behind the closed doors of an abortion facility lab where the dead children are picked out in dishes and examined for their most valuable parts. Even many who consider themselves pro-choice were shocked to the core watching these videos, which show the brutal truth about what abortion really is. On today's show, we're going to talk with my good friend David Daleiden from the Center for Medical Progress, the man you've heard on camera painfully enduring tragic conversations about the violent destruction of human life. He'll share what inspired him to go undercover and give us a look at never-before-seen video of abortionists from Dallas, Texas. Tomorrow, Planned Parenthood's president, Cecile Richards, testifies before Congress. She will attempt to justify Planned Parenthood's use of more than $500 million of your taxpayer dollars that her corporation receives every year. Then on Wednesday, the federal government must approve a new budget. As we know, a house divided cannot stand. Congress is at war with itself right now over whether to continue funding the abortion giant, and there are rumors of government shutdown over Planned Parenthood's funding. And of course, the media and Democrats are blaming Republicans. But who would really be at fault if the government shut down? Let's examine the facts. Planned Parenthood's well-funded lobbying arm has spent decades and tens of millions of dollars to get candidates elected who will go to bat for them every time, for the hundreds of millions of dollars that the organization receives annually from taxpayers. So no matter how damaging the scandal, or no matter how much Planned Parenthood's health services go down while their abortion numbers go up, these politicians will fight for the abortion corporation's interests. During a vote in late August to defund Planned Parenthood, every senator but one had received campaign contributions from the abortion business. It's no surprise, then, that a group of filibustering Senate Democrats are dutifully willing to shut down the government so Planned Parenthood can keep getting its $500 million a year in taxpayer funds. Meanwhile, someone's holding the Trump card, and it's not Donald Trump. President Obama has threatened that he will veto any budget that does not include funding for the abortion giant. What does that mean? The president is willing to shut down the government over 0.01% of the federal budget just to make sure that the government can continue to fund the chopping up and selling of tiny children in the womb. Who exactly is the extremist here?
As long as we've got to fight to make sure women have access to quality, affordable health care, and as long as we've got to fight to protect a woman's right to make her own choices about her own health, I want you to know that you've also got a president who's going to be right there with you, fighting every step of the way. Thank you, Planned Parenthood. God bless you.
Probably the ones who believe Planned Parenthood is a sacred, godly institution. But it's always about the green. Planned Parenthood spent $15 million in 2012 to re-elect President Obama, and their president, Cecile Richards, has visited the White House at least 39 times during his presidency. Now is the time to stand. Coming up, we'll hear from Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio. He heads up the Freedom Caucus, a group of representatives who are saying they will refuse to vote for any budget that funds Planned Parenthood no matter what. Defunding Planned Parenthood is just the first step to protecting the preborn. We also have to fight on the battlefield of ideas. And if we truly believe that all life matters, we have to fight even when it's difficult. You've likely heard it said that abortion should remain legal in this country because of tragic cases: rape, incest, life of the mother, or a grave fetal anomaly. Planned Parenthood and other abortionists use these tough scenarios as a primary justification for all abortion. I want to tackle those cases head on today. Later in the show, we're going to hear personal, first-hand accounts from women for whom taking a stand for life isn't theoretical or political. For them, it's personal. One was herself conceived in rape. Another was a young victim of rape. A third, a mother who faced a challenging fetal diagnosis that doctors warned threatened her own life. And the fourth, a mother who received the devastating news that her preborn child had an incomplete brain and skull and would not be able to survive long after birth. It's time to confront the pro-abortion rhetoric and make them look at these beautiful people square in the eye and say what they truly believe, that your life is not worth living. I want you to know that we also reached out to Planned Parenthood and invited them to join us today. We asked the president of Planned Parenthood of Federation of America, Cecile Richards, to join us. Surprise, surprise, she didn't even respond to the invitation. So since Ms. Richards was silent and we're in the great state of Texas, we asked Planned Parenthood of the Gulf Coast, the Texas affiliate, to join us. You may recall that they're one of the affiliates caught discussing the sale of baby parts. So far, no response. But we'll let you know if we hear anything from them before the end of the show. Right after the break, David Daleiden, the man behind the baby part selling videos, joins us live. Stay with us. Joining me now from the Blaze DC studios, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Hi, Congressman. Thanks so much for being on with us today.
Good to be with you, Lila. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're really eager to hear how you think it's going right now with the defund Planned Parenthood fight in Washington.
Well, I mean, look, we all know that it shouldn't be getting your tax dollars. Any organization who engaged in the behavior that we know they did, that we've seen that they've now, done, shouldn't be getting a dime of taxpayer money. The Speaker has indicated he's going to bring up a continuing resolution and actually allow the funding to continue. We plan to offer an amendment in the Rules Committee, which would say, no, take that money that's going to Planned Parenthood and send it to the federally approved community health centers who do good work but don't engage in the kind of behavior that Planned Parenthood does. And so we're still committed to that position. We're going to argue and fight for it. And like I said, we're going to offer that amendment in the Rules Committee and try to get it made in order so we can debate it on the floor and have a vote on the floor.
What do you think is the likelihood, Congressman, because you have the Senate and the Democrats who will filibuster to death any legislation that in any way would hurt Planned Parenthood or get in the way of their funding? So how do you think the prospects look, especially in light of the potential filibuster in the Senate?
Well, yeah, it looks uphill for us right now, but frankly, we should have been all along, Lila, making the argument. We should have started 2 months ago when this thing first broke. We should have said, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to stand up and do the right thing. We all know what the right thing is. Anyone who's seen these videos knows what the right thing to do is. We should be protecting the sanctity of human life. Everyone knows this organization shouldn't be getting your tax dollars. And if we'd have engaged in that kind of committed debate, elevated the debate, made this a real national question, I think we'd be in a much better position today and that we could have won this thing. So that's what's got to happen as we move forward. We've got to make the case. And remember, our case is real straightforward. No one's talking about shutting down the government. We're talking about funding the government at the levels everyone agreed to, but simply saying we're going to take the money from this organization that engaged in the barbaric activities that they've been caught on video doing. We're going to give the money, take it from them and give it to organizations who didn't do that. Same level of spending, same level the Democrats agreed to, frankly.
Right.
That is a common sense, that is a fair position as you can take. And if, frankly, Barack Obama thinks it's more important to continue to give your tax dollars to this organization than it is to fund our troops and our veterans and, frankly, women's health issues, then he'll have to answer to the American people for that position.
Exactly. If there's government shutdown, it's on the president and the abortion lobby. One more question for you. The committee tomorrow that you chair is going to be interviewing the president of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards. What kind of things? Can you share a question that you might be asking her tomorrow?
I think the fundamental point of the hearing is to say, we're not defunding you. I think it's incumbent upon you to justify why you should get taxpayer money.
Exactly.
And the record is so clear that there's no reason for you to get. So shift the burden, say you got the burden, Planned Parenthood. After all, this is a private entity. Why are they entitled to $500 million of your tax dollars, my tax dollars, and the people I get to represent in the 4th District of Ohio? Why are they entitled to their money? That's prove to us why you deserve it, and there's no case that they can make. We know they don't deserve it, and that's why they shouldn't be receiving it in the first place.
Excellent, excellent. It's a great point. Thank you so much, Congressman Jordan. Thank you very much for coming on with us
Lila.
today. Good luck tomorrow. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Now I want to welcome the man behind the Planned Parenthood videos, David Daleiden from the Center for Medical Progress. David, thanks so much for being on with us.
Good to be here.
I know it's been an extremely busy few months for you, and we've been all shocked, and many people have been deeply moved by the work you've done. Can you give us a quick overview on the 10 videos you've now released? What are some of the top things that this evidence proves to the American public?
Sure. So the Center for Medical Progress has recently been releasing videos that were obtained as part of a almost 2.5 year long, 30-month long, in-depth, long-term investigative journalism study of how Planned Parenthood sells the body parts of the babies that they abort. And the 10 videos that have been released in total so far, I think, really illustrate very clearly for the American people 3 different points about Planned Parenthood. The first is that Planned Parenthood sells baby parts, that the baby parts go out of the Planned Parenthood clinic and money comes in for that, and they've admitted that. Number 2, that the Planned Parenthood doctors will sometimes alter their abortion procedures in order to get higher quality, more saleable body parts from the babies that they kill. And they'll even use illegal abortion procedures like partial birth abortion, or even a live birth abortion type method in order to harvest saleable body parts. And then the third point is that this is activity that's known about and supported at the top levels of Planned Parenthood, literally from the very highest levels, the CEO, the senior directors of medical services on down.
And many of these tapes had top abortionists who held senior positions at Planned Parenthood and decision-making positions. Is that right?
Exactly. Senior directors at the national office, medical directors of some of the largest and wealthiest, most influential Planned Parenthood affiliates. Absolutely. This is the top level. This is the leadership of Planned Parenthood involved in federal felony criminal activity.
Now, as you know, Congress tomorrow is holding a hearing, and Cecile Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood, will be testifying. What do you think that they should be asking? What are the kinds of things that Congress deserves to know, especially under subpoena from the abortion leader, from Cecile Richards?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, number one, if all the Congress members did is just hold Cecile Richards accountable to explain further the admissions that she's already made in some of her communications with them, that would be enough to construct a criminal case against Planned Parenthood.
Like what? What would be an example?
Like, for example, those 3 points that I just raised. Number one, that they sell the body parts. Number 2, that they change the abortion procedures in order to get saleable parts. And number 3, that they've known about this and supported this at the national level for years. Those three points were admitted by Cecile Richards in her August 27th letter to Congress. If all the Congress members did was just drill down on those different points and ask her to tell them more about the $60 per body part that she said Advanced Bioscience Resources is paying their clinic in San Diego, tell us more about the $55 per body part that STEM Express was paying. How many body parts, how many pieces do you get out of one baby? And how do you possibly justify a cost of that much per body part? There's no justification for it. That's straight up profit that goes to Planned Parenthood's bottom line. So if all the congressional members did was just drill down on those points, they would have a criminal case ready to go for the Justice Department.
I found that a stunning admission. You mentioned the letter Cecile Richards wrote to Congress saying that $60 was the amount they got per part. I mean, how many parts can you pull from an intact specimen? You could pull maybe 7-8 parts over $500.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. Now, I'm excited to share you have some unreleased footage that you very graciously said that we could air a little bit of today. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're about to see?
Sure. So the footage that we're about to preview comes from CMP's 2.5 year long investigative journalism study. The footage you're about to see has never been released before. It shows Dr. Amna Dermish, who's one of the main abortion providers at Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas, which is the northern and western Eastern Texas affiliate of Planned Parenthood, so they cover the Austin and the Dallas area where
So
we are right now.
right here in Dallas, not far from here.
Exactly. Dr. Dermish is the latest abortion provider at that affiliate, so she's the one who practices farthest into the second trimester. She goes all the way up to 24 weeks, and you're about to hear her describe her abortion procedures.
And just for a little context here, at 21 and a half weeks, children have been documented as being able to survive and to be able to survive at very premature levels. So we're talking about some of these children as viable children, and as medicine improves and technology improves, that viability is pushed earlier and earlier. So let's play the tape now.
If there's a request for fetal brain, they're always wanting both hemispheres, and so yeah.
I haven't been able to do that yet.
Oh, to get the calvarium? It's like maybe next time.
I know, right? Well, this will give me something to strive for.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
But yeah, I don't routinely convert to breech, but I will if I need to.
And so, but you're not the medical director for
I am not
Greater
the medical
Texas.
director. No, our medical director is Daryl Jordan.
Okay.
So, and he's based out of Dallas. He goes up to 17.6.
Okay.
So I'm the only Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas clinic that goes up to.
Oh wow. Oh. And so, of those two 20-week cases last week, for example,
Yeah.
what was the intactness of the specimen like?
It was trunk intact.
Trunk intact.
So usually, what I do is, if it's a breech presentation, I'll remove the extremities first, the lower extremities, and then go for the
Right.
spine and sort of bring it down that way.
Right,
And
right.
then,
You said if that's a breech presentation, or if that's a
if it's a breech presentation, yeah. And if it's cephalic, I'll try and get the cal first.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm struggling getting the cal, and usually it's a function of how good my dilation is.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oftentimes it's hard to get around the cal, especially the 20-weekers are a lot harder versus the 18-weekers, and so at that point I'll switch to to breech.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I was just curious what we might be working with.
I always try and keep the trunk intact, just by function of always trying to aim for the spine to bring it down.
Oh,
just
interesting.
because
So
it's
that's what you
easier.
can grasp is
Right,
this one.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so you keep it all in alignment, and it just
Right.
makes the procedure easier.
Right,
So-
right.
So we just heard a Planned Parenthood Dallas abortionist talking about how she wants to strive to get an intact calvarium, pull the trunk down by crushing the spinal cord, taking it through the spinal cord. Can you explain about, especially the striving for the calvarium? Why would you want to strive to get an intact calvarium?
Sure.
What's the context of that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that stands out to me about this clip in particular is that the Planned Parenthood abortion providers are far more honest about the true nature of their work than the paid political consultants at the national office, than the national executives like Cecile Richards, who have to be the ones testifying in front of Congress, giving interviews on MSNBC or CNN. Those activists and advocate political type people don't have the luxury or have the luxury of not talking about the baby and not talking about the fetus, but the abortion providers don't, because they have to deal with the babies and they have to deal with the dead baby parts every day
committing
when
the
they're doing
abortion.
their
She's
job.
talking about grabbing the spinal cord and using that to deliver the child in order to bring the rest of the trunk with it.
Yeah.
The trunk meaning the baby's torso.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the and so then for the ones who who are not for the providers who aren't going to be conflicted about their work and who are going to try to enjoy it. I mean, then then they have something to strive for in the process of doing it. How intact can we this one out? What's going to happen with the head on this one? It's perverse. There's no other way to describe it. It's madness.
Part of the context for this clip is that you're discussing it as a potential buyer, and many Planned Parenthood affiliates are already involved in the selling of baby tissue, as you have exposed many times now. In this one, she's talking about how she could possibly get an intact calvarium, so she's sort of indicating that she might be able to perfect her skill in order to be able to sell an intact brain. Is that a right reading of it?
Exactly. That's exactly the point, yeah. And in fact, Dr. Amna Dermish was trained by Dr. Deborah Nucatola, who is the Senior Director of Medical Service, or Senior Director for Medical Services at Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
The one who talked about crushing this part and that part in order to deliver certain pieces whole to sell them.
Exactly, and also the one who indicated that converting a baby into a breech position and extracting from the breech position first, so that you could have an intact calvarium at the end. That was the way to get brain tissue if you needed an intact brain.
And a calvarium is the skull.
Exactly. Calvarium is the head.
And delivering a baby breech in order to ultimately cut its spinal cord or take out the baby's brain in order to kill it, that's the hallmark of a partial birth abortion. Is that right?
Exactly, exactly. You can take these steps that both Dr. Nucatola has described in our previous videos and also that Dr. Dermish is describing now, and Dr. Dermish was trained by Deb Nucatola. You can take the steps that they're describing of using ultrasound guidance to convert a fetus to breech position and extract feet first up to the head, and you line those up with the clinical and legal descriptions of partial birth abortion, and they match exactly.
And one last question for you, David. After all of these things are coming out and you've witnessed all of this personally, how has it affected you personally when you're dealing with these horrible conversations and the reality of what's happening in these facilities?
You know, it's definitely, you know, I feel like the best way to describe it is almost to use the words of some of the abortion doctors when they've been most honest about it, that there is a certain, quote, burden of suffering that comes with interacting with and observing and dealing with the body parts of aborted children, because the violence and the brutality and the injustice is so raw and so undeniable right before your eyes. I think that the better way to deal with that is, the more functional way to deal with that is to allow yourself to grieve it and to be honest about the reality that's in front of you. Many of the abortion providers can't do that, and that's why many of them are very troubled.
Thank you so much, David, for your work exposing this. Thank you so much for coming on. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much, David, again, and we'll be back in a minute. Joining me now, I'm very excited to say, is Rebecca Kiesling, Jenna Gassu, Crystal Blunt, and Suzanne Guy. These amazing ladies are here to share some of their stories about why they chose life, or why they're part of standing for life and being brave and sharing those stories about why they stand for life. And before I jump into everyone's story, which I'm very excited to hear about, I want to start with Rebecca, because Rebecca comes as the founder and president of an amazing group called Save the One, and you've been doing advocacy now for many years, Rebecca, for those hard cases. Those cases where abortion advocates are saying, well, this is the reason for abortion in America: rape, incest, life, health of the mother, a child with disabilities. So tell us a little bit about what inspired your work, Rebecca.
And how would you like to be called a hard case? You know, if you knew us, you would know we're easy to love, right? You know?
Beautiful, I think, and very easy to love.
But yeah. So my story is, my birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She actually went to 2 back alley abortionists, and I was almost aborted. She was pro-choice when we met, and she said she would have aborted me if it had been legal. I owe my birth to the law being there to protect me, because of pro-life advocates who are my heroes.
So this was before Roe v. Wade, right before?
Yes, I was born exactly 3.5 years before Roe v. Wade.
Wow, so your life was protected at that time, and then after Roe v. Wade, of course, abortion becomes legal throughout the country.
Yeah, and so because my own life was spared, you know, I don't take the attitude of like, oh, well, too bad for the others. You know, I feel like I was saved from a burning building, and as I have the opportunity to go back and save others, I'm going to do it.
Beautiful. So, Rebecca, can you give us the argument, because you're also a lawyer, from what I understand, and you've been doing advocacy, you practice law, so you really understand this from the legal perspective, and of course from an incredibly personal perspective from your own testimony. But can you tell us, if you had, you know, abortion advocates say, well, you know, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if a woman is raped, it's outside of her control completely, this horrible situation, therefore she deserves to, you know, she needs to have an abortion. How does one respond to that? How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that I deserve the death penalty for the crimes of my biological father. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, in 2 cases, rapists don't deserve the death penalty, and even for child molesters, they said that it's cruel and unusual punishment. So why is it not cruel and unusual punishment to punish an innocent child for someone else's crime? This is America, where we don't normally do that. Also, rape victims choose abortion at half the rate of the average unplanned pregnancy.
See, they don't want to tell people that about this brave survivors of rape who choose life. Abortion advocates just want to say, no, if you're pregnant from rape, then abortion's your solution to your problem.
Over 25% choose adoption, like Crystal here, where nationwide, average unplanned pregnancy, only 1% are choosing adoption now. And so it's interesting that they're 25 times more likely to choose adoption, and they're really choosing adoption instead of abortion because they've already been traumatized. They've already suffered violence inside their body. Why would they want more violence?
It's incredible. I want to go to Crystal because, Crystal, you have an incredibly, I mean, when I first heard about your story, I was extremely just impressed with you, and I thought, what a hero. So can you share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, well, I was 14, a freshman in high school, and I was raped by an older student in the music department. There were practice rooms there. So when I found out I was pregnant, I went to Planned Parenthood, and I told them, wow, I can't tell my dad, you know. And their solution was for me to get an abortion. So in the state of Oregon, I could do that without my parents' permission at the age of 14, and I made an appointment. I never made it to that appointment because a high school guidance counselor saw the anguish in my eyes when I gave her my forged excuse note.
So you were alone at this point.
I was totally
feeling
alone.
Like you just talked with Planned Parenthood, but you were isolated.
Right. The only person who knew was my best friend. And so I never made it to that first appointment. The counselor convinced me to tell my parents. And, you know, my parents wanted me to have an abortion or to maybe keep the baby, you know, but ultimately I made the decision to have this child, even though I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I worked with a counselor to weigh my options, and I'm so glad I decided to go through with it because I was able to finish my college degree, and my daughter graduated early at 16, and she's working on her degree, going pre-med. She wants to save lives as a surgeon. So it's incredible what God can do, how he can take, you know, your biggest test and turn it into your biggest testimony. It really is.
It's incredible. What was going through your head? You're 14. You've just experienced assault. You're at a Planned Parenthood. They're telling you, we'll take care of it. We'll give you an abortion. Just have it. What was going through your head when that gave you the courage or in your heart to say, no, I'm not going to do this?
You know, I was desperate to please my family. I was a church-going girl, a virgin when I was raped. I wanted desperately to please my father. And so when I made a decision to make a second abortion appointment, it was primarily to save my family from being torn apart. I felt responsibility for everything that was happening at the time.
Was anyone talking you through that? I mean, when you were experiencing
I mean, there was
this?
just a lot of fighting going on in the home, you know, and everyone was fighting about what I should do. And I was on the way to the second abortion appointment when I heard God tell me, it's not her fault. Take my hand. You know, and I just knew that her blood was innocent. So I didn't know at that point what I was going to do. I ended up choosing open adoption, which has been amazing because her parents are awesome, and I've gotten to keep in touch with her. So, yeah, it was a tough choice to make. I weighed my options. And ultimately, I think I made the best choice. The hard part.
I think so too, and I think we're going to get some photos of your daughter that we're going to get to share.
She's awesome.
And I think you were telling me earlier that she graduated early. You said from high school. What's she up to now?
Yes, she's an honors student in Hawaii
Beautiful.
at the University of Hawaii, and she's studying biology.
It's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah,
what would you tell a young woman or a young girl? Because we've gotten stories and testimonies and from girls who've been abuse victims, and they've been told by, Planned Parenthood would say abortion is a solution. I mean, rape, you need an abortion. If you're a survivor of rape, they tell you you need an abortion. If you're a survivor of incest, you need an abortion. Amnesty International did this big campaign to try to get this young girl in Latin America an abortion because she was a victim of incest. She needs it. What do you say to that kind of rhetoric? I mean, how does that make you feel as someone who's been through this personally?
The way it makes me feel is angry. And that's why I do this work, speaking out, because I just feel like those women, especially those who've been assaulted, but also the ones who are just in an unplanned pregnancy, they need support. And generally, there's only 3 reasons why a woman would want to take her child's life. And that's typically finances, or, you know, a man or a father not being present, or them just feeling like it's going to make it difficult for them to pursue their career or their education. And so I just think that as a society, we can create solutions for those issues, and that abortion is really a symptom of deeper issues that we need to face as a society and quit sweeping babies under the rug.
Beautiful. Well said. And Rebecca, one of the things Save the One does is they work with other testimonies from women who have been conceived in rape, or people who conceived in rape, or who are survivors and chose life. How many kind of stories do you come across? How frequent do you see those testimonies?
And also post-abortive from rape, and they regret aborting, and they tell us that the abortion was worse than the rape. We have a database now of 300. I only started it less than 2 years ago. I wish I would have started it 20 years ago, because I'd have a couple thousand. But, you know, we have a unique kinship, I think, that other people can't necessarily relate to, but it's a lot more prevalent than people think. And we're giving people opportunity to have their voices heard.
Beautiful, thank you. After the break, we're going to hear from the two other wonderful testimonies from Jenna and Suzanne about why they chose life and their stories, so stay with us. Thanks for being back with us. I'm very excited. I'm Lila Rose, and I'm very excited to hear now some beautiful stories from some very inspiring women that we have with us here today. I'd like to start with you, Suzanne. You came, where did you come from, first of all, and where did you come from today?
I'm from Marietta, Georgia.
From Marietta, Georgia, beautiful. And I know your daughter, we're going to get into this in a minute, also got to travel with you, so we'll get to see a picture of her in a moment, but can you share with us your story?
Yes, about 17 and a half years ago, my wonderful husband and I had the blessing of finding out that I was finally pregnant after many, many years of praying and hoping that we would be able to have a child. And we were elated, and we were told to get into the best possible hands, and were given a specific referral to be at a specific hospital and specific practice because of how long it had taken us to be able to have this child. So little did we know that around 5.5 months, that our daughter was incredibly sick because half my amniotic fluid was gone. And through a series of several different meetings with the doctors, at the end of the day, all three doctors in the practice told us not only to abort, but they insisted that we abort. And my primary doctor even said that the only test that he would offer for our child was an autopsy. And we had a series of different conversations. One that so sticks out in my mind is my husband and I were across from one of the doctors who, after they did the ultrasound and had seen that there was no amniotic fluid and told us to have an abortion, they sent us upstairs to this other doctor, and we sat across from this other doctor for about 20 minutes, where this doctor kept saying, "You don't understand. Your child must have," they didn't know for sure, they said, "Your child must have some kind of chromosomal abnormality that is not compatible with life. Your child will not live. There is a chance that you will die too." And the list went on, and we heard things like, "Your child will have no quality of life if your child does live." And I said, "Yes, our child will have a wonderful quality of life because this child will know unconditional love." But no matter what we said, another thing the doctor said was, "You will have many more children." And we said, even if we are blessed to have many more children, they would never replace this life. And it was so crazy, Lila, because I kept having these intermittent conversations with Jesus saying, "Help me to help this doctor understand the intrinsic value of our child. Even if she is sick, she is no less valuable than she was a few months ago when she was healthy." So it just seemed like this hard to wrap our mind around experience, as this doctor would not receive us saying, as was the case with the other two doctors, "Please, we love our child. Will you fight for our child? Will you at least try?" And right before the autopsy comment, we were told, "Well, look, no, we won't do anything for you if you will not have an abortion." Nobody, the one doctor that we were across from said, "In my 7 years of practice, nobody in your position has ever opted not to abort."
Well, with that kind of fear-mongering, I mean, you're sitting there as a strong woman who's feeling this child matters to me, but most women feeling that's a pressure coming from doctors telling you that's pressure.
Oh, Lila, I love that you said that, because in that moment, two things crossed my mind. all those precious children that never had a chance at life, but also those precious women in crisis and the fathers of the babies as well, that are feeling like they are basically being attacked for choosing life, and that is not acceptable. And in that flash of a moment, I had the deepest compassion for all those children, but also for those precious parents who would have someone breathing down their neck with medical degrees saying, no, no, no hope, no hope, no hope.
So what did you do? What did you and your husband do? And tell us what happened next.
Well, we knew that we would never want to harm our child.
Abortion was not an option.
No. We begged and pleaded, and so they said, well, just go home because there's nothing that we will do for you. The only test your child will get will be an autopsy. And we really carried the weight. We gave the doctor, I think in this country we tend to deify doctors, and we were guilty of that. And I think, we took on the weight of what they were saying, even though we would never do that, we took that on. But a very defining moment for us was we had called my mother, who is one of the most godly, amazing person I've ever met. She loves her Savior. And she said so calmly, with so much hope, she said, Suzanne, there's a heartbeat. There is hope.
Beautiful.
We fight and we pray. And that was a defining moment where all of a sudden the weight lifted and we said, she's still alive. We're going to fight the good fight. We don't know what the outcome will be, but we will not give up. And God opened up the doors through a precious, wonderful OBGYN at our church who got us into the hands of some wonderful doctors who said, yes, this looks serious, but we will honor your request to fight.
Wow. And when your little Rachel was born, can you just tell us, and I hear Rachel's born, and not only was she born, but Rachel is now 17 years old, the little girl they said would die.
17 years old.
I think we have a picture we can show of your beautiful daughter. She's with you at the studio. She came with us today, so we can see that picture now. But what an amazing story that you stood up to the fear that was put on you to give Rachel a chance, and what a beautiful daughter that just really beat the odds. Thank you. Very, very beautiful. I want to share Jenna's story too here, because Jenna has in some ways a similar story in that you were given a very difficult diagnosis, and millions of people now have gotten to see your story because of your bucket list baby that many people got to see, learn about through social media and online. Can you tell us about your little son, Shane?
Well, at 13 weeks one day, we had already shared with our family that we were expecting a lot of close friends, and that week before, right after that, we had gotten in a car accident. So because we didn't hear his heartbeat yet, we decided to, go to the doctors and get checked out.
And this was your first baby?
Correct. And so we went to the doctors, and a couple of the doctors had said, it looks like the baby's bleeding, but usually that can heal itself. So we went back to our OB, and our OB said, I want you to see a specialist, and didn't really seem alarmed at all. So I decided, that day we were going to put up a birth announcement. I got everything ready, onesies and everything, and I put them down and kind of rushed out the door to the appointment because I figured my doctors didn't seem alarmed at all. I went there and I told Dan, it was the only appointment that he didn't make. I said, let me just go to this real quick. It's nothing serious. And my mom had said, I do want to see the baby. If Dan's not going with, can I? So it was me and her, and we went, we saw the baby move, kick, and we actually couldn't even get a good enough photo because the baby was so active. So the doctor came back and did another ultrasound. And my mom works at a hospital, so she had said, there must be something wrong. And the doctor had just said, I'm so sorry. And we both broke down. We didn't even get a diagnosis yet at that point. I just, thought, what could possibly have happened? So the doctor took us in the back and wrote down on a piece of paper, anencephaly. She said, can I point out to you what's wrong on the ultrasounds? And I just said, no, I don't, our baby's perfect. Like, what could be wrong? So she explained that this is a terminal diagnosis and that the baby would not live. A lot of them could die in utero. So my mom, because I couldn't even speak, had said, what do we do now? And they said, there's nothing you can do. usually people choose to have an abortion.
And did you end up, what did you, at that point, you didn't choose abortion. You said, no, we're going to love Shane for the days that we have with us. And how many days did you end up having with little Shane?
Well, I carried him for 39 weeks and 2 days.
Beautiful.
And we made the most out of every single day
did.
and every single second. And he was born at 2:25 a.m. on October 9th. And he was with us for 4 hours.
Beautiful.
Met his whole entire
family.
family.
He was loved for every moment of that time.
Yep.
Thank you all, ladies, so much for being with us today. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we never did hear from Planned Parenthood on our invitation to join us today or comment. It doesn't come as a surprise, though. They always refuse to have this conversation. In fact, every time I've been asked to be on a show and the interviewer has also asked Planned Parenthood on, they always refuse. That begs the question, why? If abortion is a cherished right, it should be easy to defend, even against the most ardent critics. The reason is simple. Abortion is ugly. Even $500 million a year from the federal government isn't enough to hide or spin that fact. Abortion is the violent murder of a human life, period. Americans instinctively know this. Planned Parenthood knows it too. That's why they go out of their way to use dehumanizing language to describe babies. It's my hope that one day, Miss Richards and those that work with her will confront the painful reality of what abortion really is and whom it really hurts, and leave the industry. It's my hope that anyone who has been hurt by abortion or who works in the abortion industry can experience the true healing and freedom that comes from accepting the truth that their life and every life is precious beyond compare. There was a time that because of the color of your skin, you were only considered less than human. There was a time that just because you were a woman, you couldn't vote. We've come a long way since then, but we still have further to go. Today, we have a grave injustice that we must face. The worst injustice of the day is often not the one talked about in mainstream media. It's not the one popular for politicians' stump speeches. It's not the one that our universities or our schools tell us to care about. It's not the one that celebrities endorse. The worst injustice might just be the one that we least suspect because we are so desensitized to it. And because we are desensitized, that injustice flourishes. That injustice today is the sanctioned and celebrated killing of our most vulnerable Americans. It's the stripping of our weakest children of their most fundamental human right, life. It's the social idea that some lives don't matter. And it's not because of sex or color, it's because they're little, they're voiceless, they're helpless, they're inconvenient. A woman's right to choose is a powerful deception. As a woman, I know I have many choices that I can make throughout my life. But once I have another life inside of me that needs love and care to grow, then taking that life is no longer my choice. There are now two of us to consider. I know what's growing inside of me is not a lump of tissue. It's a living human being. And that living human deserves our protection. What can you do to help? First, educate yourself and others. Share the Center for Medical Progress's and Live Action's investigative videos on social media. Bring them to your church or school. The mainstream media has mostly ignored these videos, so many people aren't even aware that the body parts trafficking scandal is happening. You can find Live Action's undercover videos online at liveaction.org. Second, get involved politically. Well, this is a cultural battle as long as the government fails to protect the preborn and props up Planned Parenthood's abortion industry with our tax dollars. This is also a political fight. Call Congress today and tell them to stop new funding from going to Planned Parenthood this Wednesday. Third, go to liveaction.org and sign Live Action's petition calling for the ending of taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. Finally, don't give up. Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning and a Holocaust survivor, said that which gives light must endure burning. If we want to be a light, to spread the light, it will take effort and there will be pain. Every century has its own challenges, and every society is defined by how it rises up to face those challenges. May we not look away. May we be brave. May we be unafraid to take that light and share the truth. I want to thank Glenn for allowing me to host this very special show. I also want to thank you for being the light. You can find Live Action on the web at liveaction.org and at our social sites. Please visit us and find out more about the many investigations of the abortion industry, as well as the beautiful and inspiring stories of life like the ones you saw today. I'm Lila Rose from Live Action. Good night.